To get to the heart of the global warming story, the very heart of it, you've got to look past lonely polar bears and past melting glaciers and past the changing climate, because behind the scary news and the very scary Hollywood movies, it turns out that the scientific explanation for global warming depends to a very large degree on one particular atom, the atom that we call
carbon.
Right.
Hi.
The more you know about this atom, the more you're going to know about global warming. First of all, it's everywhere. The lead, we call lead in the pencil, it's not lead, it's
Carbon.
diamonds.
Carbon.
You?
Me?
Yeah, you. You are mostly water, but if I squeeze you like a sponge,
Like a...
your dry weight, what's left of you, you're about 2/3 carbon.
Great. Carbon's great, but can I have my everything else back? Please?
Yes, carbon is the central element of life, so much so that everything that is alive, and I mean everything, from an amoeba to a whale, from a dandelion to a redwood tree, in fact, inside every cell, in every creature bar none, you will find
Carbon.
And why?
Yeah, why?
Because as the science writer Natalie Angier says, carbon is the duct tape of life. It stitches living things together. Carbon atoms are built to attach, to grab on to other atoms. They have, as you see, 4 points of attachment, and they love attaching. They can form jungle gyms. This is the inside of a diamond. They form sheets. This is graphite in a pencil. They form spheres. They are very social, which is why they are so suited to living things. Living things, after all, come in all kinds of shapes, and carbon can make them all. But it's carbon's special ability to grab on, to grasp other atoms that is now getting us in trouble. What starts down at the atomic level can, if we're not careful, lead to big, and I mean very big, problems. All alone, there's not much a carbon atom can do. But the instant carbon grabs onto other atoms, carbons, hydrogens, oxygens, then
I'm a fuel.
that's methane.
Now watch this.
This is ethanol.
Another fuel. And check out this one. Now we're a sugar.
You're fructose, aren't you?
You want to see glucose?
No, thank you.
What about sucrose?
No, no, thank
What
you.
about French toast?
No, thank you. The point here is there's almost no limit to the kinds of structures that carbon can form. But the thing to remember is that when a carbon atom grabs onto another carbon atom, it does so with considerable force. Atoms make tight, energetic connections. That energy helps hold creatures together. In fact, carbon grips with so much energy that even when a creature dies, like this, inside the dead animal, you will still find, after it's dead, carbon atoms locked tightly, closely together. And that explains why some fuels are called fossil fuels, because they come from dead things that died a long, long time ago. Though the carbon atoms inside those things are still locked, fiercely gripped inside. So there is energy in there. In fact, let me tell you a story. A long, long time ago, in a part of the world we now call the Middle East, there was once a sea, and in that sea there were little creatures called zooplankton, kind of like jellyfish. And they'd swim around all day long, filled with carbon atoms gripped inside, and then, of course, they died. Over millions of years, a lot of them died, because that's what living things do. Die. So all their corpses, lots and lots of corpses, sank to the bottom of the sea, where under pressure they gradually squeezed themselves into a mush still filled with carbon atoms, still fiercely gripped together, that we call oil. So oil, then, is ancient life that is liquefied, and coal is just ancient life in a rock. And in both cases, the carbon bonds, they're in there tightly gripped, so there's energy inside. Now the question is, if the energy's in there, how do you get it out? Well, if you can make a bond, you can break a bond, which we will do in our next episode. So in the last episode, we learned that carbon atoms form bonds and connections inside living things, like, say, a tree. Now, if you cut down a tree, you can make the tree into lumber. And then you can take the lumber and make lumber into pieces of paper, like this piece of paper. So, if there are carbon bonds tightly gripped, if there's still energy inside this piece of paper, how do I get the energy out? Here's how. The fire excites atoms in the paper, so they heat up and they jiggle. When they jiggle, they break apart. And then immediately they find new partners. And these new partnerships are generally more efficient and more stable, so that leaves a little energy left over. That's why it's warm when you're near a fire. It's the energy being released from those carbon atoms changing partners. And here's another way to break a carbon bond. Eat a carrot. The carrot has carbon locked inside, but when the carbon gets down to my stomach, there's no fire in here, but there are digestive juices which break those carbon bonds, which once again release energy, and all that energy takes the form of calories, and then those calories power me. The same thing happens when you gun an engine. You spark the gasoline, which excites the carbon atoms, breaks their bonds, releases energy, and off you go. So we break carbon bonds all the time. We just don't realize it.
I think thought. He'd think thought.
In fact, one could say that human civilization began when the first cave person
Not a thought.
figured out how to make a fire.
That's some thought.
Or how to break carbon bonds.
What the?
And those fires over the centuries became furnaces, which powered engines, which lit up cities, and created towers and vast highway systems filled with cars. It turns out the more people become rich on Earth, the more we use carbon. Carbon is the atom that equals success, although of course there are other atoms that produce energy. There's always uranium. But uranium makes some people nervous. There is also the hydrogen atom, which has recently gotten popular.
The first car driven by a child born today could be powered by hydrogen and pollution-free.
But raw hydrogen is still hard to find and kind of expensive. So for the moment, as billions of people all over the world dream of switching from a small house to a bigger house, from a bike to a moped to a car, they plan to do it with carbon. But our love for carbon does create a problem which we will consider in our next episode.
Carbon.